Hey guys, so just last Tuesday, my third year NLP results came out, and I got to say I was quite happy with them. But having set myself a high standard of getting a first class, I failed in that regard, and these were my marks. Pretty good marks, and I have to say I was quite happy with them. Firstly, taking a closer look at my results, I realized that I was actually right in the middle of a second upper and a first class. And talking about my results, I was really happy with them, especially the 70, because I hadn't got one before and I was starting to doubt my abilities, especially since scoring 53 and 53 for contract law and commercial law. Scoring well for both juris and trust was also a boost for me. But there's a glaring hole in these results, as you can see, and looking at these results in hindsight, I wish to share some pointers that may be of use in your own attempt to get a first class. I've broken it down into 3 segments. Number 1, topic selection, 2, revision, and 3, working throughout the year. So let's get right into it. Number 1, topic selection. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, I can differentiate between public international law or PIL from the other 3 subjects of trust, jurisprudence, and company law by saying that PIL had so many different topics, and when I was studying trying to actively search for the topics I could limit myself to, I fell into a bit of a trap because with the other subjects and in their past papers, I could notice a clear pattern of the questions that were probably going to come. But for PIL, that wasn't the case. And I know it's kind of a lame excuse as to why I didn't score well, but I really think that, looking back on it, that I should have maybe accounted for this subject and studied a wider range of topics, even though I didn't like them. Because I don't think I shirked on quality, but rather I think for this subject, the width of my net needed to be larger. And moving on to subtopic 1.5, which is luck. As dodgy as it may seem, luck really is prevalent over exam papers. I think I saw that when on the company law paper, on which I scored 70, one of the questions to be answered was actually a question I recognized from the past paper. Now, I guess you could call it luck or good revision, but when I saw that question, I immediately remembered that it was from a past paper that I had done recently. And so I was able to get my examiner's report out and answer well. But that's not to say Lady Luck looked upon me with fortune, because for our PIL paper, the paper I scored the lowest on, more than half the paper was on the topics that I thought I could skip. And it wasn't a rash decision either. I really didn't go through the past papers and decide that those were the topics I didn't want to look at. But alas, those were the topics that came. And to further emphasize the role of luck, a topic which I had actually planned on studying but ended up forgetting to revise on was a topic that came as well. So what I really want to say is that luck isn't some uncontrollable force, but really depends upon how much you revise and how well you do it. So moving on to our second topic, which is revision. This point was actually brought up by my friend who didn't do too well in some of the exams. He credited the lack of revision, especially revising past paper questions that he had done before, to his losses. I wholly agree with my friend, and to suggest a framework for thinking about it would include point A, which is the importance of revision closer to the exams, as well as point B, which is that it's also important to make revision fun to do, especially since that you can think that you've done this before, so it's not interesting and worth your time. I think subpoint A is pretty self-explanatory, and so my only comment would be that don't save all your revision for the end. Instead, set yourself up a prospective timetable, as I've showed in my previous videos, and make sure to systematically cover each of the topics that you plan on doing. And on subtopic B of making revision fun to do, I think breaking it down into a game of finding patterns would be the best way to go about it. So, starting with your subject, for example company law, you could then break it down into topics, for example director's duties, and then further on it would break down into patterns, such as when a problem question mentions that a company is being bought, and then you could go even further and break it down into the differences you find between questions that have the same patterns. For example, in one instance, this pattern of buying a company could refer to the case of Howard Smith versus Ampol Petroleum, which the directors were found in breach of their duty for going beyond their powers as directors. While on the other hand, it could simply be a case of directors breaching their duty to exercise due diligence, such as when in buying the company, they overspent. So this is not a rigid framework at all, and feel free to tweak it as how you want. But I wanted to use this example as a way for maybe you to treat revision as a game and really look for patterns in the questions that you revise. Moving on to subpoint 3, which is working throughout the year. Now really this point offers a good explanation of why I didn't do so well for PIL, because PIL is a vast and meaningful subject which really did have a lot of peripherals to it. And I think the majority of time spent throughout the year was focusing on those rather peripheral aspects of the subject. Our teachers really did try to do the best job they could in giving us all the information and even trying out past paper questions early on to make us better versed in the field of PIL. But importantly, I think the time that we spent throughout the year focusing on these peripheral aspects of the subject, we could have spent looking at the crux of the subject as found in the subject guide, which I sadly utilized towards the end, being occupied with all the other aspects of the subject. So friend, thank you for listening to me talk about my marks and where I think, looking back on it, with the benefit of hindsight, at which point exactly I went astray and how hopefully you can avoid these traps in your own quest for the first class. Please do ask any questions you have down in the comments. That's it for today's video. Goodbye and have a nice day.